I'm honored to be moderating this panel with three world-class organizations who are going to talk about the modernization journey that they're on or have been on. And we hope that you'll take away at least three things from this discussion. One is how to develop and prioritize a roadmap for getting this done, how to remove roadblocks along the way, and also how to drive adoption. Because if you build a better mousetrap, there have to be mice waiting at the end of your journey. So one final footnote, at the end of the discussion, we're going to try to leave time for questions. There'll be roving microphones, so just raise your hand, someone will run over with a mic so the whole audience can hear you. And with that, let's start by introducing ourselves. Julie, would you like to go first?
Yes, Julie Dollard from Guild Mortgage Company. I've been with Guild over 9 years and in the financial industry services for over 20. Thank you for having me today.
Hi, I'm Amrita Rajgopal. I'm with Goldman Sachs. I'm in the Global Banking and Markets organization there. I head what's called Equities Client Platforms, which basically means all the client-facing technology solutions that we offer for the equities business, including trading connectivity, fixed solutions, onboarding, and so on.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Sasank Chitravedla, Senior Manager at Vanguard. I've been with Vanguard for close to 7 years now. My team was the first team to build an Appian application at Vanguard. I'm happy to share my experiences of how we have built that application, how we have retired the legacy app, and happy to be here.
And good afternoon. I'm Pete Horning, also with Vanguard Asset Management Firm. I like to think of myself as an Appian dinosaur because I've been doing Appian since 2008. So it's been a fun journey. Worked for several companies. Been with Vanguard for the last 6 years. I've got a center of excellence that supports Vanguard around the enterprise, as well as some teams that build on Appian.
Great. And you were a former Appian employee as well, weren't you?
Yes.
Yes. Yep. And I'm John from Appian. I'm on the industry team focusing on financial services. And let's get right to it. So to start with, could you each describe sort of what your journey is, where you are on that journey? You want to start, Vanguard?
Sure. Yeah. So what brought, Shashank can talk to you about what brought Appian to Vanguard, but our second big project was actually, how many hands remember Lotus Notes? Any users out there? If you were born in the 90s or later, you probably have no idea what that is. But we had Lotus Notes Domino and about 1,200 applications that users had built on it over the years at Vanguard. And we retired that and moved to Appian. And so that was a huge modernization effort. We went from 1,200 apps to 300, and then it got it down to 80. And so what we have at Appian, at least in my shop, is a very kind of horizontally scaled application with a lot of applications, some of them deep, some of them not, but it covers a wide range of different apps at Vanguard. For example, in order to speak here, to get approval to speak here, I had to submit a request to an Appian application. I did get approved, so.
Shashank, anything to add?
Sure. So Appian was new to us when we started this journey. Our team was the first team to bring an Appian to Vanguard. The journey, when I got this opportunity to talk about it, I started having conversations with many of the leaders and engineers who were part of that program when we started. Pete was part of it. Venkata here is part of it. Brian Shin is here is part of it. So there was so much of data that I had, I didn't know where to start. So I thought I'll start with Vanguard's mission, to take a stand for our investors, treat them fairly, give them the best opportunity for success in investment. So if we have to give the best opportunity, we have to have the best software, best products, and we have to have stable product. And there were many factors that we were looking at. And when we looked at our legacy application, it was not checking any of those. So that was the first sign for us to think about, hey, it's time for us to retire and then bring in a new product. Yeah.
Thank you. Julie, do you want to talk about guilds?
Yes, absolutely. So Guild has been in business over 60 years, and with that, we have many legacy systems that we're still working within. So we realized that we needed to find a solution that would help us become more efficient in order to scale our business. We've had some pretty large acquisitions and organic growth, The mortgage industry has been a little volatile, and how do we keep up with that and all the changes that happened? So we were introduced to Appian, and we saw the benefits, and we started small. We launched a tool to remove PMI. It may seem simple, but it's so not. And it was very complex. We had a lot of errors, a lot of duplication of work. We had multiple QC checkpoints. So when a customer service agent took a call, they had to enter the attributes for the cancellation, which was manual, and then submit it to a lead for QC, and then submit it to the PMI department, again, which was QC'd, and then processed. And so what we did, we started with that one process, and we were able to streamline it, reduce the call talk time. It was 8 minutes a call. So when we reduce that, that enables our call center agents to take more calls. And so that was just the beginning. It got us really excited, and we were able to, start from there. We now have 9 applications in production, and our first was launched a year ago. So what does that tell you? The low code, the quick production has been really beneficial to our business. So we're really excited about our roadmap ahead, which we have a very clear plan. And I think after attending some of the sessions today, that may be tweaked a little bit. So we're really excited to be here.
Great, thank you, Julie. And Rita?
Sure. So our modernization experience, specifically relating to, I guess, where Appian came in and helped us save the day a little bit, was with client onboarding. So client onboarding obviously is a pretty bloated topic, right? Every organization has its own kind of flavor of what the problems are. Even within just Goldman Sachs' equities division, there were so many nuances of client onboarding. Everyone you spoke to was doing onboarding in some shape or form. And really, we were at a point a few years ago when we were looking at reimagining the equities kind of execution platform. We wanted to offer cutting-edge execution services to our clients. We wanted to really hyper-focus on latency, which I'm sure some of you have obsessed over as well in financial services. So, here we are on one end innovating really hard on trying to get ourselves down from milliseconds to microseconds and picoseconds. But on the other hand, our onboarding journey was still very broken or just far from being optimal. So we had some pretty embarrassing conversations with clients in the past where it's like, okay, yeah, sure, I love your microsecond latency execution platform, but it's taking you 6 to 9 months to onboard me. So where does it go? So we had a very interesting kind of confluence of various issues that we had with onboarding, and also at the same time, massive amounts of innovation that we were doing with the execution platform. And these things needed to converge into a more streamlined journey for our clients and really be able to improve our client experience, right? So we took a hard look at that time around all of the different kind of fragmented approaches that had been taken in the past, and really brought it down to 3 different things that we want to do. We wanted to really, really invest in our client experience. The clients are at the heart of everything that we were building, whether it's onboarding, execution services, financing, et cetera, et cetera. We really wanted to improve the client experience. We wanted to ensure that we improve the time to market, which is obviously, we want to get away from the embarrassing numbers to better numbers that we could feel proud about. And also eventually that increases revenues, right? Because growth is at the end goal here as well, in addition to client experience. And the last one was risk mitigation. There were, with all of the fragmented processes, manual entries, human dependencies, we had so many risks in terms of errors that happened after we had managed to get a client onboarded, or things that did not get completed properly, whether it's paperwork or what have you. So we wanted to get to a state where we achieve these 3 kind of important goals. So where we are now, and we can talk about journey more in depth in future questions, I'm sure, but where we are now is, thanks to a lot of folks in the audience actually right now, we have about 6 production applications, which we started as, let's only solve an equities problem, to now it's a global markets onboarding solution for all of the different asset classes and nuanced solutions that we've provided. We have more than 150 application integrations that we currently have live that are unique. We have more than 1,000 users. So it's a really good spot now and kind of ripe for the next level of innovation.
Great, thank you. And I did hear some common themes. So definitely efficiency, error reduction, adhering to mission. I heard you talk about, standing up for the small investor, et cetera.
Time to market as well.
Yeah, time to market is huge.
That was something which was, in our world, we were doing quarterly elevations. Now we do daily. Yeah. So, yeah.
And, all 3 of you are at different stages of your journey, but improvement never ends, right? even if you can take stock and say we've had great success, there's still a future ahead. So I'm curious, and maybe we'll start with Amrita. What does your ideal state look like?
Sure. I think where we are right now, as I mentioned, we're at a point where we've used Appian's kind of orchestration abilities, and we've used our own API first and data abilities to come together to a really good state where we've orchestrated across 50 to 60 different functions. And we've always been, our tenet has always been, when we came to designing all of this, is that we are not trying to create some monolith, unified data model that will encompass all the data we care about when it came to clients and onboarding, but really be able to work with data where it sits. This is going to sound a lot like data fabric, but that's basically what the heart of it was for us. And we're at a point where we've achieved a lot of efficiencies, time to market gains, a lot more smoother processes overall. And where we want to get to from an ideal state perspective is now we want to go into the silos, right? Like I said, we've automated and orchestrated across 50 to 60 different functions. We've automated where we thought it was the right strategic thing to do. Now we need to go deeper into a few functions which are still very manual dependent or human dependent. There is still a lot of kind of, multiple actor type of things happening within each step. And we do see, true to theme of what was being talked about for the last 2 days, is there is a scope there for agentic solutions to happen, and so on from that perspective. And then also, like I said, we've already kind of made our onboarding solution using Appian to be kind of our standard when it came to global banking and markets. We've also used various other modes of Appian where it came to our native client solutions. And really, it's about taking it to the next level around how do we extend this over to not just client onboarding, but vendor management. And the other ideal state, which it's harder to articulate, but we are in this crazy amount of innovation that's happening, but at the same time, if a lot of you are familiar with financial services, kind of order management and execution platforms, things don't get switched off from legacy to strategic in a day, right? So you have like 10 years worth of both systems running along the same time. So really about how do we think about using all of our automation and orchestration solution into doing migrations from legacy to strategic. So that's where we see a lot of utilization happening in the future.
Great, thank you. How about you guys?
So our journey, like I said, we started with one team, and then now we are like nine plus teams at Vanguard. And then the journey has been fantastic. Like we started off, if I talk about the journey, we started off with nothing about Appian. We didn't know anything about Appian, and we didn't have anyone in our organization who knew Appian. Right? Then we started with professional services. They helped us. We built a team around it, and then we progressed from there. Now we have. Yesterday, I think Eric from our team, he competed for the coding
Live build challenge.
Live build challenge, yep. And then he was runner-up. We were the only consumers, and then we still are runner-up. I think it's a great thing for us to even think about that we were the way we have progressed, and now we are now talking about at least if I'm looking at my application, it is sort of stabilized. Now we are thinking, hey, can I use this data to actually help Vanguard? Say, if I take an example of a transfer of a test journey. So if a client is coming to us and then he's bringing money, so they want to know where the money is during the transit, right? So the data is sitting in Appian. So we have a case created. Now the case goes to the next level in progress, and then money is coming, and then money is received. Now they can use it. So earlier, we didn't have the statusing or the alerts to our clients. So they used to call us and then ask us, where's my money? Now, with this experience, what we're going to do is we're going to push this to Kafka, and it's going to be taken to our Vanguard.com, and then when people would log in, they can actually see all of this. That's an amazing experience, and then that's what we're proud about at this point.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, I'll just add to that. I think right now we're up to 150 developers, over 200 practitioners if you count product owners and things like that, 10 divisions, 25 teams, and I'd love to see that continue to grow. We have right now probably 20,000 users that will go through in a year. I'd like that to see every employee at Vanguard, and not because we want our shops to get bigger or so that Sasan can get a promotion or anything like that, but because the business sees the value and they keep coming back for more. And so anytime we have repeat customers, that's one of my favorite things.
Great. And Julie, you're a little newer on the journey. Curious to hear what your ideal future state looks like.
Absolutely. I think it's still developing. However, we do have a clear roadmap for our first milestone, which is to tie all of those applications existing today together and build hubs in order for us to move work through workflows and tasking and cut down on the turn time, improve the customer experience, especially, I know you've mentioned it already, eliminating silos. I think, especially in an organization that's been around for so long, there can be silos. So what can we do to, break those down and enhance the collaboration and accountability and create a unified system? One single pane of glass that we're able to work in, rather than the swivel chairing, which we know, takes more time and it can be frustrating for our end users. But really, the duplication of efforts, getting faster decisions. I think one of the best used terms in our organization is workaround. And we're really tired of using that. So now we're going to replace that with Appian. We're excited about that.
Sorry, that's giving me flashbacks of
Right.
all the workarounds I used to support. So having a vision is great. It's the way to know where you're going. How do you put pieces together to achieve that? And I do want to add, based on what we heard in the keynote yesterday around agentic AI, how might that impact either how you achieve your goals or even what the goals are?
Well, for us, we've already implemented a couple AI components in one of the applications we just launched last month. So we're really excited. That's just the beginning. And after seeing the AI agent yesterday, we all have ideas of where we can plug and play that into our processes. So that was really neat to see. We know that if we're not utilizing AI in our work, we're going to fall behind. And many of our competitors are already there. So Appian is our way to do that, along with our other internal tools that we have available to us. So more to come on that for sure.
Great.
I think we'll have it in most of our applications moving forward.
Cool. How about you, Amrita?
So I think in our existing solution that we've built and matured over a period of time, we've been very kind of API first already. So we've already automated so much of kind of the data retrieval, data writing, document storage, document vetting, et cetera. So I think for us, as I mentioned, we really are trying to see how we can invest in our siloed functions, which do very bespoke, subject matter expertise heavy tasks where there's multiple people involved. There's email, spreadsheets, custom databases, nuances around business flows. That's where we're trying to understand how we can use agents, which is one of the kind of 2 or 3 different things that we are still kind of left to innovate towards our ideal state. For example, I manage a team that specializes in FIX, which is our industry standard for electronic trading. And it's one of those kind of really heavy, intensive subject matter expertise related functions where you need to know the product, you need to know the FIX protocol, you need to be able to have a conversation with the client, you need to be able to have a conversation with the client's technology counterpart, and then figure out exactly what platform are you onboarding the client onto. And again, as I mentioned, we are doing multiple migrations at the same time. So we've got legacy platforms, we've got kind of the intermediate platforms, and we've got future state platforms. So a FIX onboarder's job has become so complicated over the last 5 to 6 years. And that's just one example of a silo where there's so much expertise and human involvement, and there's multiple tasks to do one thing. And that's where we see a lot of use for things like agents, where we are not necessarily just creating APIs to solve a problem. That's one example of how such silos exist within our overall front-to-back onboarding landscape. And FIX is just one example. There are other such things like commissions negotiations or KYC paperwork, disclosures, et cetera. So those are areas where we really want to start using agents. In terms of that next steps, I think right now it's been really great to be here and understand how people have used it or what are the powers available. I think the next steps for us are really just to flush out the use cases, start small, and incrementally tune to see how you can get to a better state.
I mean, to some extent, the fact that you've been API first in the past is going to help you as you continue to adopt AI.
Exactly.
So
because we already have the data. We have a data fabric-like solution already using Appian and some data fabric. And really, it's about getting to that next level.
Right. How about you guys?
Yeah, I would say if our ideal state is every Vanguard employee using Appian, I think my vision for our development teams is speed and that we are fast to build apps. You mentioned time to market, Amrita. Yeah. My goal is that we can build an application in 1 day. And I've been saying that for the last few months, and people give me weird looks. They're like, yeah, that's great, But we all saw the general session this morning, right? Like we saw what Composer can do, and I think we're getting closer to that reality. And so I'm very excited about that, to be able to sit with our business partner, collect requirements in real time, generate the objects, and have a working prototype by the end of the day. To get that fast feedback would be incredible. So I would love for us to get there. And in terms of like the role of agents in that, one place where I see agents, it's not exactly necessarily with speed, but is for us to put agents in front of our APIs right now. And I'll use an example from Sasank's shop. He's got an API called Create Case that creates a case. And it has dozens, if not hundreds of consumers, tens of thousands of calls in a day, over 100,000 at peak. And every time they make a change, you guys know the way APIs work. You can make a breaking change, your consumers have to change. If we put an agent in front of that, then you as a consumer can say, I want to create a case. My customer's name is this, their address is this, and our agent can interpret that and then send in the necessary data that we need. So it allows us to be even more loosely coupled. So that's one way I'd love to use agents. And then the other way, I actually asked Microsoft Copilot, because I couldn't think of anything else. And I came up with a great idea. We saw the think, act, learn, right? And so this app in a day concept, we know when we build apps that there's going to be changes and that what we initially think is the way it's going to be used is not the way it's actually used. So to have an agent that's not only monitoring Process HQ and seeing where there's inefficiencies, but then recommending changes back to the development team so that we could make our applications even better. And eventually maybe even just making those changes with an approval step, I think would be a huge way to make agents a reality.
So that idea about how sometimes when you release something out to the wild, it's used in completely unpredictable ways is very, very true and also very common. Except in the most rigid of use cases, people will do wild things with what you give them sometimes. Yeah. But I just want to refocus on the first part of the question a bit. So, at some point between need and vision, there's a set of things you have to assemble to get there, roadmap. What did building that roadmap look like? Julie?
I think we had to start with the people. We had to involve our stakeholders early and often. And one of the things that we did was they had to define what their need was, the use case. They had to do their time studies. They had to assess where the points of failure were in order for us to truly understand what we needed a solution for. So that was the first step, sprint zero, right? Which is probably the toughest part, I think, for coming from the business side. And making it easy to understand so that we can develop properly. So listening to their feedback, we had daily stand-ups, even if it was 15 or 30 minutes with our architect, who's amazing, and you're troubleshooting real time, and you're able to say, no, that doesn't work. And we engage stakeholders from customer service as well, and a trainer. I think that's part of it, the buy-in, understanding the documentation, the communication, and the rollout. But making sure we reinforce the benefits and how it's going to help them. And not asking for help, pretending not to, know it all. You can ask and engage. And as a leader, I wasn't there the whole time imposing my ideas. I think the people who are doing the job are key. And I would check in, follow up with our leader that was leading the project, and then attend the demos and give my feedback, but really empowering the team. I think, I loved it yesterday in one of the sessions. It said she said business-led, IT-enabled, and that is important. I think that's the difference in Appian, is the people aspect of it.
So I'm hearing multidisciplinary teams, a lot of communication, and then some quantification, because you're measuring time, et cetera. And from that, you can build a sort of a prioritized, this is what we go after first. Is that fair to say?
Absolutely. ROI, right? You put your use case together. You can tell by your time studies, the volume, all of those things, what is the lift that you anticipate from this, implementing this application? And that's also how we prioritize our projects. What has the most ROI and will affect the most users? and increase the customer experience and promote excellence. Yeah.
The rest of the panel, is that true? ROI is always first?
All right. I can chime in. I think ROI is very important. I think that's how you kind of make your case as well. And I think I was really fortunate. I got to solve most of the engineering problems, but I had a very, very expert business partner who's in the audience today, Miko. She managed all of the, how do we justify this, and what is the step zero, and what is, I think you used the word as well for it. I think we need to understand what our sprint zero is. I think one other thing that I would say in addition to ROI that was really useful and understanding the pain points is really understanding what is your POC? What are your first incremental deliveries? So I think the principle that I've used, not just for this, but in general that I've learned over a period of time being in the industry is it's okay to fail, but fail quickly, fail fast, learn from it, move on. Your first solution doesn't have to be perfect, but it has to be brave. It has to be something that you're really disruptive or trying to solve a real problem. So that was the other part of it that was a huge part of our roadmap is we needed to, of course, understand the problem. We needed to understand the pain points. We needed to take a step back to see how we can design a solution that could then grow. So for instance, we started a problem saying, let's solve the equities, execution client onboarding problem that then evolved into equities, fixed income, prime brokerage, commodity, like it just grew from there. Is how do you create that foundation? And that was a huge part of our roadmap. And we incrementally made it better, right? But we had to start small. Get to that first few use cases, which proved the ROI as well, and then build on top of it. So that's a big part of the roadmap.
It's funny you said that you want to build an application in a day. Yesterday, they built in 15 minutes. So it's no more a dream, it's reality now.
Yeah, for sure.
So coming back to ROI, I think first thing first, AI in general, I think it has hit us so fast that many of our engineers are still trying to understand it. So for me, as a technology manager, I would first want my engineers to play with it. Just play with it. Don't even think about use cases. Just understand how the tool works.
Use it in your personal life too, right? Like
Yeah. Exactly. So start using that. Then I think we can start talking about use cases, and then they will emerge. As and when they emerge, I think, again, we need to sort of look at them at a different angle where, you can build a spaceship. If nobody uses it, it doesn't make sense, right? So we need those use cases, and then they will emerge. And eventually, they're going to give us ROI.
Yeah.
Great. So along the way, I'm sure there have been challenges and roadblocks, strategies for overcoming them. Vanguard?
Going, you got it.
Sure. I mean, when we started, I'm going to start with 7-year journey, right? So we started with no Appian experience. So we brought in consultants from Appian. So we thought, hey, let's build a complex application and then see how Appian can scale. Can Appian even do it? Because we don't know Appian. So it did it. But the challenge for us was this complex application in turn had many simple applications. So our crew had to go between old system to new system. So that was not a good user experience. So we have learned it very quickly. And then we pivoted, and then we started looking at, instead of building a complex application, does it make sense for us to see and build an application or a transaction in our world, which could actually make sure that our crew is in one system and then going through the whole journey, right? That's one thing that we have learned. And another thing that we have learned is case management in general has reusable, there are a lot of features that could be reused for a number of transactions. So we didn't think about that. We directly started jumping in and then started creating, complex transactions. Then we realized it, we took a pivot, and then we started building the common components. And that actually did a lot of, that was a magic for us.
Yeah.
I would just add on to that. I think one challenge we're actually still working our way through is Appian is a very powerful tool, and you can build almost anything. And so if you are my business users and you give me requirements, I can custom build you almost anything. That doesn't necessarily mean I should. And so what we talk a lot about with my development teams is If your business is willing to make a few compromises, they can get an app in 2 weeks instead of 2 months. And that's a big difference. They may not want to make those compromises, but if you can say, hey, look, here's the value you're gonna get, we can focus on other things and put a dollar amount to it, they are willing to make some compromises. And then you're really able to use Appian at scale and at speed, as opposed to building a lot of time-consuming custom applications.
Yeah.
Amrita?
Sure. So I think when we, 7-year journey for us as well. So if I look back, I think there were two, and again, I'm going to speak a little bit more on the engineering side. There were entirely different challenges to be had on the, understanding the users and the business part of it as well. But there was a huge amount of engineering complexity that when we first started thinking about Appian. And the second part of it was the actual business flow complexity, and I'll get to that in a second. When we thought about Appian, we first thought about Appian on-prem and install it in-house, because as a regulated entity which didn't really want to play with cloud too much at the time, and there was obviously a lot of sensitivity and regulation around client data and client information, client confidentiality, we really wanted to see how much of it could we keep on-prem within GS, right? That ended up being not as scalable for us, so we had to quickly iterate over to using Appian in the cloud, which is great in terms of scalability of the Appian software and deployments, but it posed a huge challenge for us from how do you integrate into Goldman Sachs systems and Goldman Sachs data. And as I mentioned earlier, we really wanted to be API first, because not just because we could then scale our kind of integrations across what are the 150 or something systems that we connect to today, but really about we didn't want to ship over all of our information into another store. And we also didn't want to create like this complex monolith data model. We wanted to see how we could be as agile as possible in reading from all of the different dependencies, but not really depend on systems to move along with us into Appian, right? So we had to build, at the time, now I think there's a lot more plug-and-play capabilities, but at the time we had to build a way for us to have our Appian deployment speak to GS and call APIs both bidirectional, and getting that up and running was actually some of our biggest challenges at the time, because we also had to go through months of tech risk negotiations and compliance approvals and things like that. And also introduce some really challenging, interesting thoughts for us around what data belongs within your Appian deployment versus what data belongs where it already sits in reference data systems, right? So we quickly came up, after that kind of first few months of iteration, we came up with our own tenets, which we kind of still use. And we still live by those tenets, which is, we need to have the client confidentiality and our regulations met at all times in terms of where the data is stored. We need to make sure that from an SDLC standpoint, software can be upgraded, tested, all of that. And then, of course, from a data separation standpoint, anything that doesn't belong in an Appian process or an Appian request or case doesn't sit in Appian, right? So those are ways that we ensured that our use cases could be met safely. But it was, there were a lot of roadblocks along getting that up and running. But once it's up and running, now it's scaling across multiple applications, and it's all well and good there. The other part of it is the complexity, which is that within each business flow to onboard a client, there's obviously multiple hoops that you have to jump through, and also the nuances of legacy versus strategy, which is strategic, which is always a pain point. So,
great. Julie?
I think she took the words out of my mouth. I mean, talking about integrating with the legacy system, which is our source of truth. Yeah. And we have an enterprise data warehouse that is also connected to that. So being mindful of where, does the data live? And of course, integrating with that legacy system was very difficult. Mm-hmm. But in our subsequent applications, we've been able to build off of that data transfer. So it's not as complex, we're just adding new data points. But I do think the biggest hurdle was changing the mindset of folks in our organization. Being in business so long, we've had people at our organization for 30 years, 40 years, using the same systems that they developed maybe in the 90s. And we've historically not, in the past, used vendor partners very often. Now we know that vendor optimization is definitely the best path forward. We can't do it alone. And I think, like I said earlier, we can't do it alone. It takes a whole team. And so, that's kind of how we've progressed past some of those hurdles, but changing the mindset of folks. And that's where you show the results. We invite everybody and their brother to our demos. We share the recordings. We want to share what this tool can do for us in the right, practice. But, I think that's one thing, and why I'm up here from the organization is because I've been a very let's just say, loud champion. And I think that's what every organization needs. And I'm lucky to have the backing of our executive team, executive leader in loan servicing. And, I think that's key. But the end users, just the feedback. We have a whole SharePoint page that shares all of our tools that we have available, testimonials, demos. So we share that link to anybody and everyone we can, because we want to, change people's mindsets, let them know what's out there. Not just Appian, but other tools too that can make our business better and stronger.
So I love that answer, and it also sounds like it's part of what you're doing to drive adoption, to make sure you're not building things, putting them out, and then people are just ignoring them. What strategies do you folks have for driving adoption? Amrita?
I think keeping a very continuous feedback loop with our users has been super beneficial. So at the time of adoption, we also need to make sure that we are giving them the support. It's not just use it and, I'll get back to you a week later on your email. But we had a continuous feedback loop, again, with the help of our business partners and the product team that's dealing with them more directly. We ensured that they were getting, it's almost like white glove service. We need to get to the point where users feel comfortable using the tool, and we know that the tool is in steady state, and after that you can get to a better support model. But during that time, we had a continuous feedback loop. We ensured that any issues, or not just about, hey, there's a technical problem, but more like this is not doing what we thought it should be doing, those were addressed in a very agile way. So we had like a SWAT team at all times. Yeah. So, yeah.
I think someone mentioned ROI. I don't remember who, but I think that's useful not just to help prioritize, what should I work on, but also to get the buy-in of your users and your development team, actually. Because if I say, all right, here's a 5-year NPV for this application that we're building, or this is what the value you can generate year over year, first of all, your development team is going to be engaged because they get the why, right? You're putting dollars to what they're doing. And then your end users, they also see it, right? And that's a story that they can begin to tell with their leadership. Hey, I'm using this new system. Yes, it requires me to learn some new things, and I miss a few things from the legacy system, but we are generating this amount of money. That's money back in our clients' pockets. And so you start to have that sort of snowball effect if you can give them the why and do it in terms of dollars.
Yeah. That's a great point. I think on that one more thing is if you can articulate what the risk is if you don't do it, that would also be great. Yeah. So especially in financial services, hey, this system is going to be demised, we need to automate it. And that's usually a very good driver for people to adopt.
Cool. I also love the term white glove service. I learned too late in my career the importance of white glove service for applications. Sometimes I treated them like a Viking funeral where you kick it off and, hope they figure it out. So.
It's a good point. We have a Teams chat with the project team that is ongoing. So it's real-time feedback while they're using it. Hey, can you tweak this? Is this something that we can do, or is this a phase 2? Those are things that are going on daily. Yeah. And it's really hands-on, and it's been beneficial.
I think that's great. All right, lightning round, so we have time for questions. One piece of advice you'd give to the audience?
Engage your people, and don't do it alone. We engaged Appian and our partners Nav Labs, and they've been able to help us accelerate a lot of our development. And I just want to say thank you to our internal, architects. They're amazing, and our senior analysts that really helped us get this off the ground.
Great. Yeah. Amrita?
I think going back to, I may have mentioned it, fail fast, fail often, learn from it. Your first solution doesn't have to be perfect, but if you get started, you can learn from that and hopefully just make that brave start.
Great.
I would emphasize on engage people, and in fact, in our case, we actually co-located. We actually went and sat with the people who would use the system. Mm-hmm. So that actually accelerated our engagement as well. So we were making changes. And especially they were coming from a legacy world where things were slow. So when we told them that it is ready for you, they were surprised to start with. So that was an amazing experience. So I would emphasize on that.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, I would say 2 words: change management. And that's something that I learned from my peers, some of whom are here today. But we're talking modernization, so that means there was some kind of legacy system, right? Excel, Lotus Notes, carrier pigeons, I don't know, but people are gonna like that. They may not want to change, so find those champions in your business and work with them. along the way in order to get that adoption.
That was awesome. And look at the time, it's right 5 minutes left. Anybody have questions? And while we're getting the mic circulating, I just want to thank our events team for an amazing job recovering from the crazy this morning.
Yes.
Well, my question's for Amrita. I'm a former Goldman from 10 years ago. And I saw the early adoption of Appian back then on Marcus, even though I was auditing workflow automation, which was being done in-house because it was a very build shop at that time. How has Goldman changed to enable business initiatives across teams to leverage Appian now to increase speed and control at silo levels? Or is there still conflicting development cultures that continue to challenge the broader adoption?
Oh man, didn't start with an easy one. Can I just say compliance won't let me talk about it, so I won't talk about it? No, just kidding. Just kidding. So I think, yes, we are still very much a build first, build in-house first attitude, or has been for a while. I think depending on, again, but it's always about finding the right solution for the use case at hand. And that's always been the driver, in addition to, clients at the heart of the problem and of course compliance, but really about finding the right solution. I think when it comes to, I don't think it's necessarily a conflicting solutions. It's more about needing different solutions for different types of problems. For instance, I think Appian's obviously been very differentiating to the certain types of problems that we were trying to solve in the onboarding ecosystem, for which we didn't have anything in-house, in which case I don't think there's anything stopping us from making a case for it. But there are other solutions that may be similar but are solving different problems. And you don't necessarily need a behemoth deployment to make those solutions come to life. So I would call it more than conflicting development priorities. It's more about development kind of solutions for different types of problems. And that's how the organization has always evolved. Yeah.
Next question.
Hello. My name is Bob Smino from Wilmington Trust. My question is, Appian Professional Services came in and sort of demonstrated for us in real life, building out new applications for us. And specifically, they use what I would call like the Appian citizen developer model, where the sort of product owner, the functional brain was also the one at least doing the low code type of stuff in Appian, and no sort of hardcore sort of separate developer. So I guess I'm interested to hear quickly, how many of you have achieved that, and if you have, is it situational, citizen developer model?
We've been piloting that for the last year. I would say tread carefully because I've heard a few success stories and a lot of horror stories. So the use cases you choose and the guardrails you put in place are really what's going to define your success. People will definitely want to do citizen development. There's no lack of interest there, but then who's going to maintain it? How are you going to enhance it? What happens when there's an issue? What's the production support model look like? So if you've thought through those things and you do some piloting, we're seeing success, but we're rolling it out very slowly.
Yep.
Hi, I'm Claire from Technology Ukrainian. So question, stepping maybe away from Appian for a minute. When you have an automation use case that comes to your organizations, how do you decide that Appian is the best fit for that use case?
Great
Christine
question.
Panel, anyone?
I'm smiling because I'm looking at Renee here. We have a center of excellence that does fit assessments. And so they've got a Confluence template that they'll send to our users, asking things like, what's the volume of requests? How many users, right? Like a range of questions. And what that does is they're able to say, number one, is Appian the right tool? If not, we can direct them somewhere else. And number two, which Appian instance? We have 10 of them, right? And then we can take that template and hand it off to the development team, and they already have a jump on discovery.
Yeah, I will add to that every firm is different, and size plays a role in this decision-making process, but more mature organizations do tend to have some architectural function that is filtering these kind of requests and steering them to the right set of tools to use, which, if you ask me, is 99% of the time Appian. But. Anyone else have questions? We have time for one more.
Hi, Mark Valeris from Vanguard. Question for Amrita. You mentioned that you started your journey about 7 years ago and you've got about 150 API integrations. Have you guys started any of that modernization effort to externally synced records or API-backed records at this point? And what has that experience been like for you, if you have?
When you say externally sync records, are you
So
outside of Appian?
instead of saying making an API call
Yeah.
directly, actually having the record backed
Yep.
by the API, is that have you shifted to that model, or is that still on the roadmap, or do you plan to shift?
We plan to shift there, but I think we haven't gotten enough, there hasn't been enough of a need to do that just yet, because it's, I would say, humming along nicely is, for lack of a better word. But yeah, if there's a utilization for it, we would definitely consider it. We've thanks to a lot of our Appian partnership people here, I think we've had a lot of deep dives into various things to try and see which one satisfies business needs very well. So when there's a need for it, we would definitely be open to it.
I want to thank the audience. Great questions, great panel. Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you.